To die for God is something that the Jewish people, individually, collectively, have done for a long time. We've been kicked out of over 100 countries. We have been harassed. We have been subjected to cruelty. We've been murdered. Brutally for the last almost 2,000 years. And yet, for the most part, being subjected to such inhumane ways, whether it's the Crusaders, whether it was the Cossacks, whether it was the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, whether it was some king, whatever it was, King Ferdinand and Isabella with the expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492, the expulsion of Jews from England in 1290. For 400 years, there were no Jews in England. And what Jewish people have gone through, the sword or their faith, by and large, they accepted their faith as their fate and not doing it at a calculation, not doing it because they did the cost benefits and, better to die, with your faith because you're going to get great reward. The reward was not the motivation. That's rational. That's reasonable. Or because you appreciate and you understand, that they did it because the Jewish soul is bound up in such a way in a supra-rational manner that we have no other choice. We're not ready to give up our identity. We're not ready to give up our connection to the divine. And therefore, for the most part, Jews gave up their lives. To give up your life because you believe in something so strongly, you live for something. As the saying says, if you have nothing to die for, then guess what? You have nothing to live for. So the Jewish people, not necessarily were always someone who lived for, but when it came to die for, they did. They did. And again, in a supra-rational way, not because they made a calculation and, better this path than, accepting another faith. Nope, that's not the way it happened. Which is remarkable. That being said, Judaism is not about dying for God because your divine soul revealed itself to you in a time of a challenge of faith. Judaism and Torah mitzvahs and relationship with God is about living with the divine. Living with the divine inside of me, not dying with the divine inside of me, but living with it is ultimately the point of why we are here. How do we do that? How do I live with the divine that's in me? That it should be an integral part, as opposed to that which is my natural, soul, the humanness in me. To live as a human is not what we're talking about. To live with divinity is what we're talking about. How do you live with that divinity? Well, firstly, you live with it because it's a part of the makeup of your soul called the hidden love, Ava Masuteris, that is a part of you. but it's hidden. How do we reveal it? Not just when it's a test of faith, but it's a test of, am I thinking the right thing, saying the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? That's where we're going. Welcome to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We're on a journey to be able to find the way that we can live with our divine soul. As we've learned, we've got two souls. A divine soul that by and large is inactive. It's there. It's what defines the Jew. But it's inactive for the most part. Because how do we live? We live au naturel. We live by default for the most part. Let's say, for the most part. In other words, default is the animal soul. And what's the animal soul about? Well, what feels good, right? Its own survival is what it determines, right? The needs of the animal soul. Survival doesn't mean just having bread on your table. Survival can mean emotionally, psychologically. Survival is, a person can be a workaholic. Why? Because that gives them a sense of value. Now, I've got an amazing company that I make lots of money. I feel value. Well, who's got the value? Your animal soul feels valued. It needs it. But how do I live with the divine in me that doesn't need that kind of value? Why does it need that value? Because the divine in me is, I'm whole, complete, and worthy, not because I did something, but because I am something. The divine in me is an I am, right? A part of the divine. That's a part inside of me. So I'm worthy, whole, and complete because of that. The question, though, becomes, okay, that's great, but that's not sufficient. That's a beginning step. The next step is, how do I live with that on a daily basis that it becomes my truer reality? Remember, the Beinoni is who we're talking to over here, and to us, the Beinoni in training, B-I-T, that's who we are. The Beinoni has mastery over thought, speech, and action. Complete mastery. How do we get to that mastery? Now, it's not black and white, right? And that's why we're Beinoni in training. Black and white would mean Beinoni, complete mastery. But we're in training. So it's not about the complete mastery, but it is about how do I live with the divine in me and make that more of a reality than living with my natural tendency, which comes from the animal soul, from the humanness in all of us. How do we get there? So this is what chapter 20 will continue to bring us, and it's going to be a continuous, ongoing conversation for a few chapters. So you won't get the full picture until a few chapters from now. But as we say, follow the yellow brick road. Follow us. Follow Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, and we'll get there to appreciate this idea. Okay, so we're gonna kind of diverge now in chapter 20 to come to an appreciation. So firstly, to bring this idea out, the Alter Rebbe brings out that it's well known, for those that know, that all the 248 positive commandments of the Torah, right, and the 365 prohibitions of the Torah, right, which equals 613, are an expression of the first 2 commandments of the 10 commandments. I am the Lord your God is a positive statement, which then brings you to inclusive of that is 248 commandments. There shall be no other gods, which is a negative statement, right? A prohibition, in other words, is the source of all the prohibitions, 365, right? That's why, by the way, people made a mistake, all right? That when God spoke to the Jewish people, 2.5 million people at the foot of Mount Sinai, when he spoke to them collectively, he said only the first 2 commandments. The first 2 commandments are all inclusive of all 613, as the statement we just made, right? Now, so in that sense, it's as if they heard the whole Torah from God, right? Because it's all inclusive. Because all the commandments are contained in them, obvious in a very generalized way, right?
He spoke only these 2 out loud that all the people, all the Jews heard.
Yeah. So therefore, just as one's love of God is motivates you to obey these 2 commandments, even at the expense of giving up your life, right? They may serve also motivate you to observe all of the commandments, right? In other words, I'm the Lord your God. Hey, only God, and there's no other gods, right? That motivates you to love God to such a degree, as we explained, that ready to die for God rather than accept any other faith. But what the statement now is, oh, this is a motivator for all the commandments, right? To observe them. But we need to clarify this, right? Because what does I'm the Lord your God mean? It refers God's unity. Why should all the positive commandments be an affirmation of God's unity? And why would all the prohibitions be a manifestation of idolatry? Think about it for a moment. Like, there's a law in the Torah, right? A law in the Torah that you shouldn't hold a grudge against somebody, right? If you hold that grudge, it's a prohibition. But why would that be considered like idolatry? That's what we're saying, right? Why would that consider like idolatry? Idolatry is a pretty serious matter. How would that be like idolatry? Right? Or, you didn't do another, you transgress another mitzvah. You had the wrong thought about the sacrifice in the times of the Holy Temple, that, this was the, that you could eat it for 2 days, in one night. I really could only for one day and one night. Oh, that's a prohibition. You shouldn't have that thought. Torah tells us, fine, okay. For whatever reason, it's not relevant here. But why is that considered like idolatry? Right? Remember, they only heard 2 commandments. And those 2 commandments is like they heard the entire Torah. Right? So meaning that the prohibition of there should be no other gods, that if you had the wrong thought when you're bringing an offering in the times of the Holy Temple, right? And you had the wrong thought, that's a prohibition. You got to be careful with having the right intention of what you're doing. That's like idolatry? How does that make sense? That's the issue over here, right? So, in other words, really what we have to come up and understand is, what does it mean, God and his unity, right? If we understand this idea clearly, right, that God is one and unique, then we'll understand how even the most minute little thing that seems to be, okay, a prohibition, but is tantamount to idolatry. And likewise, every positive commandment, like, I'm the Lord your God, and, accepting God as your and your a relationship with God is, even the smallest little positive action is equated to accepting God as your God, right? And the unity of God. Okay, so we need to understand, what does unity of God mean? What does that word mean, right? So this is where we're going, okay? And all of this is to then give us an understanding of how I could live with the divine in me, right? The divine in me, and not just die with it. Okay? But hold on to that. Let's not go there. Okay. So in our prayer book, every morning we say, before the actually offerings that we speak about, it says, you are he who was before the world was created, and you are he that since the world was created. What does that mean? Like, in other words, God didn't change. He created a world. He created me, created you. He created universes. And in that act of creation, God did not change. Right? In other words, the unity and the oneness of God that was before he created the world, which, undeniable, which is God. He is it. After he creates the world. You hear that? I felt it, right? Seems to be real. What do we say? No, it's only but God. God's unity, right? Because it didn't affect any change in him. If it affected a change in him, I mean, God's changes. That means God's not eternal. I mean, therefore, God's not God. We can't say that, right? But hey, excuse me? That makes sense to you? After all, I'm here. After all, I feel that and I heard it. So it must be. We're saying that before, this didn't exist. I didn't exist. Now I'm here. And we're saying, oh, just as before there was only God, he was the only the only thing. Now there's only but God. Okay. How do you wrap your mind around that? How do we understand that? How does that make sense? Got the question?
Yes.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. No. Well, we're going to start the process now, right? Of like understanding God in creation, right? And how is it that, hey, I seem to take a part in creation. I take space in creation, right? Yeah. We feel that we are
Still dependent.
dependent. Doesn't mean that there's only one reality and one only thing, right? Right. Your children are dependent on you, but they're independent of you. Your children need you. They're dependent on you, but they're independent of you. They don't exist in you. They're not of you. They're separate of you. So are we dependent on God? Yeah, we can have a view of God, and that's how most people do. God's up there, and I better be a goody good shoes. Otherwise, down here, I ain't gonna get a good life. Or maybe I won't get a good life now, but the world to come, I'm gonna get. Oh, Garden of Eden. We'll go to hell, right? That's how most people look at their relationship with God. That's not what we just said here. We just said that before God created the world, there was only but him. After he creates the world, God didn't change. There's only but him. Yeah, but hey, where am I? Right? Where's this table? How do we understand that? How does it make sense? So we will understand now God's unity, right? Then we will appreciate where I am right now, who I am right now, what's, and so on. Okay? We're good? So How is it that I am and I'm not at the same time? Right? That's where we're going with this. We're good? Yeah? Okay. So this is because ultimately everything is not besides him and as if absolutely non-existent. What does that mean? How is it that I am not existent? Well, cup, please. Actually, bring me some water. You don't mind? Amazing. Exhibit number 1. You with us, folks? Amazing. Okay, I already made a bracha. So, a human creates from, this is a silver goblet. Close your eyes and think it. I made this. Did I make it? I really formed it. I took malleable silver and formed it from a piece of silver that was malleable into a goblet, right? L'chaim. I made it. I put it down. It's independent of me, though. I shaped it, right? Formed it, but I didn't create it. I didn't create it. There's only one creator. We are formers, we are shapers, right? But we're not creators. What does it mean, creation? Well, before creation, what was there? Only but God. And when we speak about only but God means in a level that is totally something we can't experience because we experience, there's a table, we experience that I am, right? So not only, I don't experience only God, right? But before creation is only God. So I don't experience it and I can't really ultimately truly fathom it. I can understand how it must be, but I don't truly get it. Therefore, we call that nothing. Because what's nothing? Nothing means no thing. Well, before creation, God was no thing, right? And what does he now do? He makes something. He made me. And not only made me, he makes me right now. He makes this goblet right now. I formed it, but he makes it. What does that mean? Before creation, there was no thing, just God. And now there's a something. Well, in order that this something should be created, not formed, I formed it, but already was a form of another kind of form. And now I just formed into something else. So it was independent of me before. It's independent of me after I formed it. But God, before he created, is just but him. Now he's made something, it's called ex nihilo, something from nothing or no thing. Well, now just as God was the only reality before, now he's still the only reality of it. And it only exists because of him. Because if he were to take away the word that animates it, what would happen? It would revert back to what it was before it was created. No thing. This act of creation was not something that happened, but it's something that happens every moment that God is creating with the word of God. Okay? Is that clear? Now, let's take it a step further to appreciate. We're saying that before God, it's like absolutely nothing. That it's absolutely nothing compared to him. Well, why is that? How do we understand that? We need a metaphor for this. And this is what the Alter Rebbe gives now, a metaphor for the remainder of chapter 20, to give a metaphor. In other words, I'm not separate from God after he creates me. And therefore, really, being a part of him and all of the universe and everything is a part of him, it's right. But how is that comparable to him? Well, it's his word that creates. So let's take a metaphor from a person. Okay? I'll take me. L'chaim. I just said one word, l'chaim. God says one word, he creates a world. So how is that comparable to him? A word of God. I don't mean the value of it, and I don't mean, keep your word type of thing, right? No. The fact of a word. Well, let's see me. The fact that I say a word, l'chaim. Well, my capacity to speak, my capability of speaking, some of you know already, I could speak and speak and speak to no end. Right? Got that? So my one word, comparable to my power of speech, is insignificant. It's like nothing. Right? I don't mean the value of it, the impact. Sometimes you said one word to a person and you made such an impact. You said to them, l'chaim, to life, and you made such an impact. I'm not talking about the impact of the word, because that's not the word itself. That's with all the emotions that come with the word, that comes with all the, everything else, right? I mean, just the face value of a word comparable to my power of speech, that we can speak, and we speak thousands of words a day, millions of words throughout our lifetime. One word is nothing. Again, not the impact of it, because that's not the word. That's the impact of the word. The fact of the word is completely incomparable. Now, let's take it a step further. Where does my speech come from? Where's it come from?
Brain.
No, your thoughts. Your thoughts, which are in your brain, but it's not the brain specifically. It's your thoughts in the brain, right? Right? Your thoughts. Now, compare the word l'chaim that I had in thought, right? If we compared to speech, it was right. Compared to the thoughts that you have in your mind, that's really incomparable. Why? Because speech, you don't always talk. I can close my mouth sometimes. Okay. Right? But my thoughts are never stop. So one word comparable to the language of and the words of thought, totally incomparable. Right? Well, that's good. Let's go further. Let's go a step further. Where do your thoughts come from? Why do you think what you think? Because you feel what you feel. When you have no feelings towards something, you're not going to think about it. But when you have strong feelings about something, good, bad, whatever, it's irrelevant, right? You have strong feelings for something. Guess what? You're going to think about it. Strong feelings of love, strong feelings of hate, whatever it is, it's irrelevant. That's not the point here, right? Well, how's that one word comparable to where its source is now? What's its source? Your emotions, right? How is that? Now, that's really Zippo. Why? Because in your thoughts, you think in language, just like you speak in language. But in emotions, there's no language. Because once there's language, that's the thought of emotion, but it's not emotion itself. Right? Emotion means the raw emotion, like right? That's a raw emotion. That wasn't a language. I mean, that's some kind of language because it was some kind of expression, but that's a language. Not a language, but that's an expression that would be in any language. Whether you're speaking English, Hebrew, Yiddish, French, Spanish, right? It would be in every language because it's beyond language. In other words, the source of language of the word l'chaim, right, comes from my emotions that's beyond language. So that one word relative to my emotions is totally nothing. Now, where your emotions come from? Your intelligence, not your thoughts, your intelligence. Now, there's the way you perceive things, the way you see things will be how you develop your emotions. So if you perceive your cup half empty, you're going to have an emotion that's not going to be such a positive emotion, right? If you see your cup half full or completely full, then that will develop an emotion, right? That perception is not in language either. Thought is language. And we have to don't get confused between the mind, right, that has thoughts, and the brain, right, that is beyond, is thought. That's intelligence, right? Intelligence is, you can be very intelligent, but think babyish. You could be not so intelligent, but think Tanya, right? So two separate things, right? You might have a low IQ, not such a high IQ, but you're always thinking words of Torah. Thinking and intelligence do different things. You might have a very high IQ, but, always thinking foolish and baby thoughts, or, undeserved thoughts, right? Got that? Clear? We have to make that distinction, right? So the source is your intelligence to emotions. Emotions is to your thoughts to your word. So here, God creates a world with one word. How is that comparable to him? And this is a human metaphor. To me, it's incomparable, a word. Again, not the impact of the word, but the fact of the word is incomparable to my intelligence, to my even emotions, even to my thoughts, and even to my power of speech. That's a metaphor for us to understand that even though God now creates me with his word at this moment, comparable to him, there's nothing. I'm not, right? I'm not. Is that clear? That's very powerful. What does that mean? What does that mean? Hmm? Explain, Lee. What does that mean?
We're nullified because he's so great. Like we're nothing.
So great. I don't know if the word so great is, I don't know if I would say the word great, because great, I think we're giving a human value to it. You're probably thinking in a human, not because he's so great, because he is but him. Right? I don't know, great is the way to describe that. Therefore, the world is non-existent relative to him. Doesn't it affect a change in him? God didn't change. He's one and only, right? One and only. What does that mean about me? I'm not independent of God like my silver goblet. Yes, I fashioned it. And, you can tell a Picasso from a Rembrandt, because if you're a connoisseur, you're going to know the difference. But it's independent of Rembrandt, a Picasso, the painting. The goblet's independent of its maker. But we're not, from our creator. Independent, separate. We're not. Now, we need further clarification on what this means. We're in the middle of a thought, I got to tell you. I'm going to leave you hanging because it's the end of chapter 20. And then we got to go into 21, 22, and 23. And, well, 21, 22, at least to get a full picture of, hey, so what this is the idea, you're a speck in the universe, and therefore you can feel your insignificance. But there's a difference over here. You and the universe are separate, and you're just a speck in the universe. But here you're a speck of a piece of God. very different. But we need more to go into this to appreciate this. But hold on. This is gonna follow we're Chabad, remember. You're all Chabad, okay? You're all Chabad, which means you got to use your intelligence to understand the truth of God, and therefore the truth of me, and how I fit into all of this. Okay? But so the point over here is to intellectually understand this. Because if you intellectually understand it, then what's going to come out from this is you're going to learn to be able to live with the divine in me, the divine of God.
Mhm.
Okay? So, Patty, we could think that we're an illusion. The illusion is that I'm separate from God. That's the illusion, right? That's the illusion. That's what's the key over here, right?
Mhm.
We're not just an intention. We're not an illusion. The illusion is that I feel separate from God, and that's why God. And we're gonna have to. Part of the questions he should be coming up to you says, "Well, if that's the truth, how come I'm not feeling this?" Right? Right? How come I'm not gonna? We're gonna go. Just take it step by step. Let the Alter Rebbe lead us, and we'll get it. He gave us life. How can we be separate? Yeah. Well, right. Exactly. He didn't give us life. He gives us in the present tense life. Right.
Listening.
Okay. Let me see. Okay.
When we think and act as if we're separate from him, that's when there's idolatry.
We'll see where we're
The
going.
beginning
Yeah.
of the chapter,
Yeah.
idolatry.
Yeah. That's where we're going. All right. Amazing. Thank you, folks.
Thank you very much.
All right.